So as we get started, I wanted to just talk briefly about um, the calculator. I'll show an image of the calculator here soon. We'll talk about some of the basics of the calculator, and then we'll get into a few practice problems just to make sure everybody understands how to use the calculator. I think I've mentioned before, but there's a reason why we chose this calculator, and it is because, actually, I'll share an image of the calculator here. Okay, so you should be able to see it. This is the Texas Instrument BA2 Plus. And hopefully everybody has one by this point. It'll be extremely helpful for you for this exam, but also the last two exams of the course. You'll need to be comfortable with the calculator. Now, the reason why the school is requiring us to use this calculator is because it is the calculator that is allowed to be used on the CFA exam. So the CFA is the Chartered Financial Analyst, and the CFA is becoming more and more required to work in finance, not only in investments, but in corporate finance. It's becoming more and more popular thing to earn, and it takes a lot of work. But one of our goals in the finance program here at SUU is to make it so that more people are familiar with this calculator, so that if in the future they want to try and earn their CFA, they don't have to learn a new calculator. So that's the reason why we've chosen this calculator. The BA2 Plus also is pretty affordable, and we wanted to make sure that students didn't have to spend a lot of money for a calculator. So just looking at the calculator, let me see, I'll annotate this. As we go through this tutorial, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I can't draw on this, that's okay. So I just wanted to mention a few things about the calculator. Obviously, there's an on and off button in the upper right-hand corner. You can push it to turn it on, push it to turn it off. With this calculator and other financial calculators, we also have this second button. And the second button is a shift button. Sometimes people will call it a shift button. And you'll notice above most of the keys, there is writing. And so if you hit the second button, then the writing right above the key is what you're going to be doing. So the second button is something that you will use. We'll need to use it regularly to clear our registers, and I'll talk about what that means here in just a second. Okay, so as we go through this, I have posted online this document that I'm going to show you right now. Just a second, mouse. Okay, so hopefully all of you can see this. This is the Texas Instrument BA2 Plus tutorial. So if you go onto Canvas under modules, this is available, and it's a great reference. We're going to go through some of this today. We're not going to go through all of it, but just to give you a feel for what we're doing. So we've talked about turning on and off the calculator. We've talked about the second key. Hopefully all of you have your calculator in front of you, so you can work through this together. But we're going to do a couple of things at the beginning to set up your calculator. And so I wanted to go to that section right here. Okay. Can you guys see the Word document that I'm sharing?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is change the display. This will help us to change the decimals from 2 to 4. And we definitely want to do that. And the reason being is if we're only doing 2 decimal places, then we will end up having some rounding errors that we want to avoid. So in order to do that, you're going to hit the second button. Then you need to hit format. Can somebody look and tell me what button has format right above it?
Points.
Yes. Okay. So if you hit the second button, then it's not going to be the point anymore. It's going to be format. So hit second, format, then hit the number 4, then hit enter. Enter is up at the top. And then you hit second and quit. So I want everybody to do that. 4 decimal places is where we want to be. Did it work for you guys?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, now let's go to the next thing, periods per setting. And this will be very important as well if you haven't already set this. So what we do to check your current setting, press the second button and then press the P over Y. The P over Y button is the one that is white, that has the I over Y. So if you hit second P over Y, the display shows the setting for periods. The calculator comes preset at 12 periods, but we don't want it set at 12 periods. We want it set for 1 period. And this will make more sense, or maybe as you've done your different practice problems already, maybe you've needed to change that. But in order to change it to 1 period per year, you're going to press the second button, then you're going to press P over Y, you're going to hit the number 1, you're going to hit enter, then hit second and quit. Okay, once you've done that, I want you to try hitting second and P over Y again to make sure it says 1. Did that work?
Yes.
Does anybody have it not working? Welcome, Bredika. Okay, so those are the 2 settings you want to make sure you have set correctly on your calculator. If you don't have them set the right way, then you'll have rounding issues, which will affect your answer. And you absolutely want to have your periods per year set to 1 period per year. That'll help as you work through the problems. Okay, so just another thing to be aware of is how to clear the calculator. So there are different methods of clearing the calculator, clearing data from the calculator. The first one has to do with the memory. So you can clear all memory. And in the class, you can use memory obviously, but all of the practice things that we'll do, I'm not going to practice using memory. So if you want to use memory, that's something you can do on your own. The one that is going to be very important for us is the second one. This is what you'll need to do after you finish every question. So you're going to do, well, you can do second, quit, second, then clear TVM. And the clear TVM is right above the button that says FV. F as in Frank, V as in Victor. Okay, so to clear worksheets other than TVM, then you will hit second clear TVM. And then this CE over C, which is in the bottom right corner, clears the entire display, but doesn't clear the memory. But what happens is, and let me share the calculator again. So what happens with the calculator is we're going to practice using these white buttons, the N, the I over Y, the PV, the PMT, and the FV. And if we put information into each of these buttons, it'll stay there. It stays in memory. And if we don't clear it in between problems, then we might get the next problem wrong because it might have something in memory that we don't want to have. So I hope that makes sense. So clearing it between every problem is important. Okay, so let's scroll down. We've talked about those things. Now let's talk a little bit more about the time value of money keys. So the TVM, time value of money, keys are located on the third row, and you can see those. In general, time value of money problems will involve 4 variables. So N stands for number of periods. Spotlight. I over Y stands for the interest rate. PV stands for present value. PMT stands for payment, and FV stands for future value. So usually the problem, you'll know 3 of these, and you're going to need to solve for the 4th one. The 4th one's unknown. And so we'll practice some problems here. Actually, let's start with a practice problem. This is lump sum. Can anybody on the call tell me what a lump sum is, if you've watched the lecture?
Pay for it for one time.
Yeah, so it's a one-time thing. It's only going to happen once. So it could be a payment today, or it could be a payment in the future. Like, for instance, maybe I'll loan somebody some money. So I've got a friend, he needs $10,000, and I've got $10,000 in the bank, and I'll tell him, okay, I'll lend it to you for a year, but at the end of the year, you need to pay me back the $10,000. That's a lump sum. So it's just a one-time single payment, all in one lump. So let's go ahead and practice this. To begin, we consider the time value of money calculations with the lump sum. In this situation, we do not use the payment key. Payment key is only used when there's a recurring payment. Like if I've got my mortgage, I pay the same amount every month. That is a payment. That's not a lump sum. That's what we call an annuity. So we won't use the payment key when we're looking at lump sums. So let's start off to be sure by clearing our time value of money buttons. So you'll hear the word register. A register is just a place to store stuff. So we're going to clear the TVM register. That's, if you hear that, it's just clearing the memory. So hit second, clear TVM. So that'll set the payment equal to 0, and we don't have to worry about the payment button. So here is our first example. We've got, we're trying to find out what is the future value of $100 after 3 years if the interest rate is 26%. Okay, so we have $100 today, but we don't know what it'll be worth in the future because it's earning interest 26% per year. Okay, so we've cleared our time value of money register. So what we're going to do is we're going to enter 3, hit the number 3, and then hit the N button. So that is for 3 years. So 3, and then hit the N button. Then you're going to hit 26, type in 26, and hit the I over Y button. And then you're going to put in 100 and hit the PV button. Now, if you've cleared your register, then you don't need to put anything in payment. But you could, if you wanted to, put 0 and hit the payment button, because that's what it is. There's no payment. There's just one lump sum 3 years from now. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the way that I like to do these problems. Okay, so when I'm reading I would call this a story problem. I read it and I figure out, okay, so it's asking me, I want the future value. So I know I don't know future value. That's what we're trying to figure out. But what do I know? I write the things I know. I can see N. I look for N. N is always going to be a time period. It could be 3 years. It could be 12 months. So I'll write that down. And then I, this is the I over Y. I'll write 26. And then for present value, I'll write 100. Okay, so if I put these in, I'll be able to calculate what future value is. Now, one of the things to be aware of when we're using the calculator, you'll see that we've put this in as a whole number. So how would we write this as a decimal? We would write it as 0.26, right? That is 26%. However, with a calculator, we don't use the decimal. We'll write it in whole percentages. Now, what if this was 26.5%? Then that's fine. It would be 26.5. But you want to make it round numbers that we're putting in. Okay, so has anybody got the answer for us? Okay. Okay, so to determine I didn't give you the last bit. You have to hit the CPT button, compute, and then hit FV. So after you've entered all these, then you're going to hit compute FV, and FV should be negative 200.04. Did anybody get that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, did anybody not get that? Do you want me to go over this again? Okay, and that's fine if you did. So this is a lump sum. Let's see, here's another example. In this example, we are trying to figure out what is the present value. So we know that in 5 years from now, we're going to receive $500 and the interest is at 10%. What is the value of this $500 worth today? And these we're looking at time value of money. So I want you to clear your register. Do you remember how to clear your register? We need to hit second and then clear TVM. So hit second, clear TVM. Okay, now let's start entering in what we know. We know N is equal to 5 because of 5 years. N is the time period. The interest rate, I, is 10. We don't have to put anything in payment. You can leave that blank if you've cleared your register. And then hit 500 FV for future value. Now you need to hit compute and PV. And what did you guys get? Did anybody get 310.46?
Negative 310.46.
Yes, that should be that's the correct answer, 310.46. Excellent. Okay, so the hardest part isn't necessarily putting the information into the calculator. In finance, the hardest part is reading the words and figuring out, okay, well, what am I really trying to do? What am I trying to do here? And what information do I know in order to calculate what I want to know? And so it's the words, I think, that make it more difficult, not the calculator part. I think once you understand what what you're trying to do, then it's easier for the words and easier to put in the amounts into the calculator. Okay. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, let's I'm going to skip. We're not going to do another. Okay, actually this is an important one. Okay. So this is example 3. So assume a bond can be purchased. This is, in this one, we're being asked what rate of return would we earn if you bought the bond. And there's an important thing that we need to understand here. Okay, so up to this point, we have either looked for future value or present value, but in this case, we are looking for I. We want to know what the interest rate we're earning on this bond is. What rate of return would we earn on the bond? So what we do is, again, we've got to put in what we know. However, there's something silly about the calculator. And this is a trick that you need to be aware of. If you're trying to find either in or I, and you have both the present value and the future value, you can't put them in using the same sign. So this one, in this case, we're going to have $200 be a negative 200, and future value be a positive. They have to be different signs, otherwise the calculator will not work. So if you have in your problem, if you have both present value and future value, you need to make one of them a negative, or and it doesn't matter which one. So let's look at this. Let's read this together. Assume a bond can be purchased today for $200. So that's our 200 going out, a negative $200. It will return $1,000 after 14 years. So then we're going to get back $1,000. So that one's our positive. The bond pays no interest during its life. So there's no payment. What rate of return would you earn if you bought the bond? So we know in is 14. We know present value, but what we have to do is we hit 200 and then we hit the button that has the plus/minus. That's in the bottom right. And then we hit PV. We don't need to put 0 for payment, but if you want to, you can. And then 1,000 for future value. Once you've done that, then clear that. What you'll do is hit compute and then hit I over Y. So I want everybody to try this and see if they can get 12.18%. If you've got it, go ahead and say, I got it.
I got it.
Oh, good, good. Okay, so so this is the trick. Don't forget, if you have, if the problem gives you both the present value and the future value, you cannot put them into the calculator using the same sign. So one of them has to be negative. Okay. So those are all lump sums. Now let's talk about annuities. And if you watch the PowerPoint presentations, it introduced annuities. And so we're going to practice doing these. With the annuity, we've got to use a payment button. The payment button now has to be used. Okay, so I'm going to read the words and we're going to figure out what we know. So what is the future value? So already we know that the question is asking, what is the future value? So we're trying to solve for FV of an annuity of $100 paid at the end of each year for 5 years, if the interest rate equals 6%. Okay, so whenever I read a story problem like this, I will draw myself a timeline. So at the end of each year, we're going to receive $100. So what we're trying to do is figure out, well, what's the future value of this annuity? So 5 years from now, what is this stream of money worth? So when I'm doing the test, if I were taking this test, I would first draw this. I would draw my timeline so I could see that. And then I would write down what I knew. So N I know is 5 years, right? And I know what I is. It told me I is 6%. Present value, you can leave blank, or you can put in 0 if you want to. Payment, it tells me the payment is $100, but we're going to want to put that in as a negative amount. And then with this information, we can compute our future value. So you're going to want to put this into your calculator just like this. You'll hit 5, and then hit the N button, hit 6, and hit the I over Y button. You don't have to put this in, but you can if you want. 0 and hit the PV button, and then 100, hit the plus or minus button and hit the payment button. And then you'll press compute future value. So you should get $563.71 in the display. Did anybody get that?
Yes.
Great, great. Okay, now, has anybody forgotten to clear your register in between? To clear the time value of money? If you're not getting the right answer, it might be, oops, sorry. It might be because you didn't clear your register. You're gonna want to always hit the second button. So, second. And then you're gonna, yeah, go ahead.
Professor, do we have to clear the work button or the clear the TMV button?
Oh,
CVM.
CVM. Are you talking about this one, CE over C, or clear
Yes.
work?
Yes.
So that all that does is going to make the display show 0, and so that's what I normally do is I'll hit second clear TVM, and then I will then hit. Oops. Then I will then hit. Okay, sorry. I'll hit the button CE over C, just so the display shows a 0.
Oh, okay.
So it starts me off at 0. So hit second, clear TVM, clear the work that's there, and then you're ready to go. And so automatically, what happens when you hit second clear, it automatically makes each of these registers 0.
Mm-hmm.
And then you are able to put in new things. So because it's already 0, you don't have to put these in because it already is 0. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So did anybody get the right answer? I think I already asked that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to our next question. Does anybody have questions so far? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something that is potentially a problem for some students because they'll forget that they've made a change to their calculator. So we'll talk about annuities, the ordinary annuity versus annuity due. Okay, so in this problem up above, this was an ordinary annuity. That means that the payment comes at the end of each year. You can see it says paid at the end of each year for 5 years. What if it was paid at the beginning of each year for 5 years? So paid at the beginning, these $100, each of these $100 would be moved over. So the first payment would be right here at time 0, right at the beginning. The second payment will be at time 1, third at time 2. There would be no payment at time 5 because remember it's 5 payments at the beginning. So what we're going to do now is we're going to calculate this same example, and we are going to use it an annuity due. Let me just make sure. Okay. So here it says each payment of an annuity due. That means when it says annuity due, you've got to think that's beginning. It's paid at the beginning. If it's ordinary annuity, it's paid at the end. So a typical question on the test might say, it might use the word annuity due, or it might say that payments are at the beginning of the period. And so one thing to be aware of is on a test, if it doesn't specify if it's at the beginning or at the end, then we always assume that it's the end, because that's the ordinary annuity. An ordinary annuity is the one that we assume it is, unless the problem says this is an annuity due, or if the problem says the payment's at the beginning of the period. So we're going to practice how to switch our calculator between these two. Your calculator is defaulted to calculate an ordinary annuity, but here we're going to look at how to calculate an annuity due. So each payment of an annuity due occurs at the beginning of the period instead of at the end, as with the regular annuity or ordinary annuity. In essence, each payment is shifted back one period. To analyze annuities due, we're going to change this. So hit second, and then hit the BGN. Can anybody see which button we have to hit for BGN?
IRR.
It's the PMT button. Do you see it? It's one of the white buttons. Right above the PMT, you've got the writing BGN. So hit second, BGN, then hit second again, hit set, and set is right above the button that says enter on it. And then you can hit the CE over C button, and you should see BGN appear. Did that work for everyone? I've got my calculator out. I'm going to try it just to make sure it works for me too. So I'm going to hit second, I'm going to hit begin, I'm going to hit second and hit set, and mine says begin at the beginning. And you can see at the top of the screen, right above your zeros, if you've hit the CE over C, it should say BGN. Be very careful not to leave your calculator on this setting, because what will happen is on a test, there might be one question or a couple of questions that are beginning, but the rest of them are an ordinary annuity, which comes at the end. So after your question, if you don't change this back, then the rest of your answers for the other problems are going to be wrong because you're still set on beginning. So let's switch it back to end, just so we're where we need to be. So hit second, BGN, second, set. And now mine says end. Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. Okay, so interest conversions. We will need to get to this. I'm trying to remember if this is on the on this exam. I apologize. I know we have it for this class. We will do an effective annual rate calculation. I think we do have it on this exam. So let's practice this. So what happens, there are many different reasons why we would need to calculate the effective annual rate. And we'll just take a look right here. We can use a formula if we want to. Here's the formula: 1 plus K nominal divided by M to the M minus 1. This can be a little complicated, or we can use our calculator. So let me give you an example of when we might want to use EAR. Equivalent annual rate allows us to compare two different rates, apples to apples. And hopefully you understand the American or English phrase apples to apples. That means you're comparing two similar or like things. You're not comparing an apple to an orange, you're comparing an apple to apple. In my example, let me draw here. Okay, so let's say that you were going to buy a car and you've got two different options with two different interest rates. And one of them would be 10% compounded 4 times a year, so quarterly. The other one, it might be 9% compounded 12 times a year or monthly. So these are two different, they're compounded over different periods. So we've got an interest rate, but the amount of time or how often it is compounding is different. So you can't just say 10 is larger than 9, so we want to pay the lower one. 9 might be higher because it's compounding more regularly. So when I say compound, maybe I can explain that. So if I had $100 and it was compounding monthly at 10%, so I have $100 compounding monthly at 10%, how much would I receive at the end of the first month? What's 10% of $100? It's
10.
$10. That's right. So now I have, at the beginning of the next month, I have $110. And now I'm going to earn another 10%, but this time on $110. This is what we call compounding. Compounding means you're earning interest on the interest. So not only am I going to earn interest on my original $100 during month 2, I'm going to earn interest on my new $10. And so you can see how quickly money can grow when it's compounded. Well, when you go to the bank or to a car dealer or other things, they might compound at different rates or different time periods. So a 9% compounded 12 times a year might be more expensive than a 10% compounding only 4 times a year. So what we do is, in order to determine which one's better, we would use what we call an effective annual rate. And so let's just try it here. We're going to calculate what is the effective annual rate for something that's 10% but compounding 12 times a year. So the effective annual rate, what we're going to do is we're going to hit our second button and then hit iConv. And that is if you look at number 2 on your calculator, you can see right above that is iConv. This iConv, I think, means for interest conversion. We're converting it either to an EAR or to a nominal rate. So you're going to hit second iConv, and then you're going to hit the up arrow. The up arrow is on the top of your calculator. Then you're going to hit 12 and hit enter. So I want everybody to try this right now. I'll try it with you. So I'm going to hit second iConv. When you hit iConv, it should say nominal or NOM. When I hit up, there's C over Y. C over Y means compounding periods per year, how many payments per year. So in our example, it's 12 payments per year, right? So we're going to enter in 12 and then hit the enter button. Okay, now hit the down arrow and it should say NOM, N-O-M. NOM stands for the nominal rate. You're going to hit 10 and you're going to hit the enter button. Okay, now you're going to hit the down arrow one more time and it should say EFF, right? So yeah. This one was C over Y, this one was NOM, and this one was EFF. That stands for the effective annual rate, EFF. So hit down arrow and then hit compute. And it should say the answer in your calculator should be 10.47. So you could have a question on a quiz or on an exam that will say, what is the effective annual rate? And you'll use this process to calculate the effective annual rate. As a matter of fact, I think there is one question on the exam that asks you to compare which rate is lowest. And it's going to give you, you know, different rates compounded over different periods. So in this case, in my example here, if it was 10% compounded 4 times a year, instead of entering 12, we would have entered in 4 compounding periods a year. And so we would have gotten a different effective annual rate. I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and clear this. We're going to do just a couple of more things before we end. Let me just see if we want to do this one. Cash flows. We will practice that at a later time because we don't need cash flows for purposes of this test. Okay, so I think we've gone over everything that is needed that you need to know for this upcoming exam. There's more to learn on your calculator, which we will learn. Cash flow operations is something we'll do for our our third and fourth exams. And so you guys will need to learn that in the future. But for purposes of this exam, you need to know how to do ordinary annuities. You need to know annuities due. You need to know how to do lump sum. And you need to know how to do the effective annual rate. If you can do all of those, there's 4 different things that you need to know how to do on your calculator. If you can do those, then you will be able to do well on the exam. So my recommendation between now and the next review is that you go and do all the practice problems and do all the quiz questions so that you can practice using your calculator. As I mentioned before, this document is available at the in the module section of Canvas, and it's I think the very first document of module 2 is this Texas Instrument BA2+ tutorial. So if you have any questions, you can rewatch this video. You can look at the tutorial Word document. If you still are not sure and are having issues, then please give me a call, shoot me an email, and I'm happy to meet with you. Any questions before we end?
Yeah, actually, can we use this document during the exam?
So during the exam, unfortunately, you can't use the document. However, you've got 1 page front and back. And so you could take and you could put any of this on your 1 page front and back, but you couldn't use this whole document.
Okay, thank you.
So this document's 13 pages. That was a good question. Thank you, Yuton. So yeah, I would go ahead, and if there's something that you're not sure you're going to get right, the one I think is the hardest is this effective annual rate that we did here, the interest conversion. Absolutely put anything on your notes page that would be helpful to you. So, okay, any other questions?
I might have one real quick, actually.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Are these questions going to be like a fill in the answer, like a short answer, enter in your answer, or multiple choice?
Okay, so the exam, and I'll go over what the exam is more in detail during our exam review prep next week, but there will be some multiple choice And some of those multiple choice you'll be required to use these types of calculations in the multiple choice. Some of the multiple choice are just conceptual, so it's you don't have to do any calculation. But there will be some short answers without multiple choice that you're going to have to calculate and put in the answer. And some of those are story problems, but if you do the practice problems at the end of the lecture slides, and if you do all the practice problems that are assigned out of the book, then I promise you will have seen a problem almost identical to the ones that are on the test. So just practice what's been assigned through the lectures, and you will do very well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if you guys do think of other questions, just feel free to give me a call, and best of luck, and we will see you next week on the review session.